What happens when a fired manager suddenly returns, not as a beggar, but as the founder of a new company? What he did at the shareholders' meeting didn't just shake the room, it changed the tone of conversations across the entire industry. I came to work, as usual, at 7:45 a.m. Yes, I am the idiot who is the first to turn on the coffee machine, put the papers on the shelves, and greet the security guard by name. My coworkers called it stability. The director called it reliability. My wife called it service without leave. But to me, it was a system. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And I was good at it. Hell, I was the best. 6 years. Not one complaint. Not one overdue project. I was the one who pulled reports while the whole office was watching the Super Bowl. The one who closed deals while everyone was off to corporate. And yes, I didn't do it because someone asked me to. It was because I believed that once you start something, you finish it. It was my little cross to bear. And then Jason came along. My nephew. With a dapper smile and the 3-line resume. The same guy who forgot that Excel spreadsheets not only need to be opened, but that you have to write something in them. He showed up 2 years ago. And guess who took him under his wing? Because I believed in mentoring. Because I thought it was possible to pass on experience, build a team, and leave something bigger behind. It's funny, isn't it? This week I got called into the principal's office. I thought it was going to be about a promotion. I was ready. The numbers were up, the reports were shining, the team was running like clockwork. And he didn't even get up. He just said that from now on, Jason would be running the department. To potential. You get it? Not for experience. Not for the work. Potential. For the last name. For sitting in his house at Thanksgiving. I walked out in silence. Colleagues avoided my gaze. The secretary lowered her eyes. Even the elevator seemed to go slower. I went down to my department and sat at my desk. Then I just opened the mail. There was a report Jason had forgotten to send a week ago. Busted the deadline. I closed the tab. And I realized I wasn't in the system anymore. You wouldn't believe what happened next. I sat at my desk for like an hour. My hands were going through the papers, even though nothing was adding up in my head. All I could hear was my own voice in my head. 6 years, Anthony. 6 goddamn years. For what? And you know what the worst part was? It wasn't even anger. It was emptiness. The kind of emptiness that felt like everything inside of you had been twisted, squeezed dry, and left to sit there, cleaned up, comfortable, no chance. Someone chuckled in the hallway. And I already knew what it was. The news spread like coffee over a white shirt. Jason's in charge now. Except he didn't know how to steer. All he'd ever done before was fill in the templates I'd made for him. I wanted to snap, to scream, to say, "Are you crazy?" But alas, I was raised differently. My rage is always at a quiet speed. It accumulates like water in front of a dam. And so the dam began to creak. I didn't go to lunch. I just sat and reviewed my projects. All the reports that saved the quarter. All the schedules that leveled the logistics. All the thank you emails from clients. There were over 30 of them. Want to guess how many of those emails Jason had? None. Except for one from his mom congratulating him. Toward evening, I got an email from HR. Congratulations, Jason Clark has been promoted to department manager. Your position remains unchanged. Attached is the updated reporting matrix. The attached file was in Excel format, as a symbol of this whole circus. And who was supposed to fill it out? Me, of course. Handing the reporting to someone who a week ago didn't know the difference between logistics and logarithms. I didn't open the file. I just picked up my old notebook, flipped through to the first spread. There was my plan for this year. 3 goals. The first one I closed in February. The second one in June. And the third was supposed to be this job. Well, it wasn't me who crossed it off. No one came in, no one said a word. That's how the office works. Here, betrayal always takes place in silence, because everyone is afraid that you'll be next. And I realized I'm already next. Just not fired but humiliated in a tie. As I drove home, the radio was playing some meaningless pop. I turned it off. I looked at the road. I thought, Anthony, do you still think you're needed here? Or are you just one of those people who's kept around as long as it's profitable, and then you're out. The answer came without pathos. You're an outdated system, brother. And the new director is building his own family-owned, useless, but his own. That was just the beginning. The next morning I arrived early. Not because I was impatient, but because I couldn't sleep. The principal's words rattled around in my head like an old boiler. You're stable. But we need people who move ideas. You know what that means in corporate parlance? We're not interested in you anymore, but we don't want to fire you, you know too much. I walked through the empty office. The lights were still on. In this silence, I felt like I was at my own funeral rehearsal. The desks where I'd built projects. The chairs where I'd trained people who now pretend they don't know me. And this fresh calendar with the quote of the day. Great decisions come to those who aren't afraid to change. Cynical as hell. Especially when all those great decisions are made behind closed doors, family council. I turned on the light, poured myself some coffee. Not from the machine in the management office, but an old, creaky one that smelled of burns and damp. Just like everything else in the damn wing, outdated, but working. By 9, the office had filled up. Colleagues passed by, tossing off the duty morning, as if nothing had happened. They didn't ask. They didn't want to know. Because admitting you've been screwed means admitting they might be screwed too. And admitting it is a luxury in corporate hell. Jason showed up around 10. Wearing a shirt that cost as much as my laptop and with the face of a man who mistook power for adulthood. He walked by and nodded. Anthony, hi. You'll be at the meeting today, right? HR and I want to discuss a new approach to stream coordination. A new approach. An approach he couldn't describe in the last meeting because he thought inventory was about inventions. I looked at him, and I realized this guy doesn't even realize what he's holding. He's just been given a steering wheel. He's gonna ask his uncle where to go. Or Siri. I didn't say anything. Because if I opened my mouth, it wouldn't be sarcasm. It'd be something that would get you fired. Instead, I gathered my papers. My real papers, not reports, not matrices. My own. Everything I've created. Everything I'd done. I copied them onto a flash drive. I password protected them. And I left only what Jason needed on the table. Let him handle it. And then I opened up Word and started writing. Not a statement. Not yet. I started writing my plan. Because if I'm out of this circus, it's not as a clown, it's as a man who's tired of being silent. And you know what the beginning of that plan was? Stop letting yourself be used. That's where it started. What happened next changed everything. Subscribe and stay, you don't want to miss how it unfolded. Have you ever heard a ceiling crack quietly? Not the drywall, but the invisible one, the one that holds you in place for years while you build your career, and then cracks above your head when you get uncomfortable. So there I heard it. For the first time in 6 years. Not a pop, not a clap, not a clang, but a faint crunch that said, "That's it, kid, you've reached your limit. The exit is just around the corner. Don't hold up the others." After my silent speech with the flash drive and the phrase, "Stop letting yourself be used," I became a walking shadow in the office. People began to avoid me, not out of fear, but out of banal corporate politeness. He seems to be getting ready to leave. It's better not to get involved. Typical office dweller logic. Silence is safer than loyalty. And Jason himself? The guy was clearly starting to feel like prom king. On the first Monday, he held a meeting in the conference room, renamed the logistics plan to Dynamic Adaptive Delivery Strategy, and drew a macaroni-like diagram with a marker. Then he turned to everyone and declared, "We need to think bigger, move faster, play in new ways." And you know what hurts the most? Some of them nodded. Even the ones I personally taught who didn't know the difference between an invoice and a packing slip when they first came in. These people started repeating his slogans. Because corporate memory is short and fear is long. I sat in the corner watching this puppet show gain momentum. Every time Jason used another think outside the box level phrase, my blood pressure rose. Because, damn it, I was the one who was taking this office out of the box. I was the box they had now decided to throw out. And so the real game began. HR started sending me tasks that I used to do voluntarily, but now, officially reporting to Jason. Small, humiliating tasks. calculating packaging for a past shipment, double-checking shipping documentation from New Jersey. I've done this before. It was closed. But now, do it again. Because the young executive said so. I wanted to ignore it. But something inside me held me back. It was as if the remnants of my professional dignity kept me from breaking. Or maybe it was excitement, because something else lit up inside me, cold and heavy and precise. It wasn't pain anymore. It became preparation. Preparation for something they certainly weren't expecting. Wednesday morning, I decided to play by their rules, only smarter. I walked into Jason's office without knocking. I just opened the door and walked in. He flinched. Logically, he wasn't ready for a visit like this. Nothing on the desk but a phone and a notepad. And coffee. Coffee, of course. Hey, Anthony. Is there an emergency? Jason, I began calmly, you asked for a packing estimate. It's done. Here you go. Oh, and by the way, I went over the New Jersey documentation. All the data matches the originals, just like before. He nodded like I'd won him some kind of war. He pretended to look into it, then he said, Great job. Keep it up. I couldn't resist. Have you ever tried opening those files yourself? Just once? He hesitated. His eyes darted to the side, and I realized that no, he hadn't. I understand, I added. I don't have time. I have to be in charge. I turned and walked away. I didn't slam the door. I knew I'd done something important. I'd zoned out. He realized I wasn't just a pawn. That I wasn't broken. And maybe for the first time in weeks, he felt he could be stepping on my toes. Then the movement began. Small, subtle, almost imperceptible, but I could feel it. HR suddenly remembered the rotation of duties policy. They started moving tasks that Jason couldn't handle back to me under the guise of process optimization. I smiled, not out loud, inside, because I knew they wanted me to stay to do the dirty work while the new blood took photos for the internal digest. But now I was playing my own game. I performed each task with the precision of a surgeon, leaving a mark, a comment, a recommendation. I was turning their absurdity into a weapon. Systematically, coldly, professionally. And at some point, Jason himself approached me. No entourage. No coffee. Just walked up to me. Anthony, listen. I've been thinking. Why don't you take control of the East Side strategy? Just while we're setting up the processes. I looked at him. You mean doing your job again? He sighed. And, for the first time, he didn't answer. And in that moment I realized I had my power back. Not through titles. Not through the corridors of power. But through respect. Or at least fear. And sometimes it's the same thing. But that was just the beginning of the real climax. Friday morning, I was the first one in the office. You could feel that strange, thick silence in the air when everyone pretends to be working, but in reality they're waiting for something to blow. And it did. At 9:17, I got a copy of an email from a customer in Texas. One of our biggest customers. In the email is a scan of a signed agreement sent by Jason with the wrong date and incorrect shipping terms. The amount of damages, if we'd run it, $62,000. I knew if it came out without context, the whole department would suffer. I could silently correct it, like I used to. Save Jason's ass and keep drinking that bitter coffee out of the old machine. But I didn't. I forwarded the email to Richard, the director, with the subject line, urgent, regarding the North Trade Agreement. In the body of the email, brief, factual. No emotion, but with a copy of the error. And most importantly, a copy of how I'd already noted the error twice in the drafts I'd sent to Jason the day before I signed. The reply came 12 minutes later. Accepted. We'll do an internal review. Thank you for your vigilance. Now imagine Jason's face when he was called to the second floor at 10:30. No explanation. No, let's do this later. He walked past me pale, with eyes like a kid whose tablet had been taken away. I nodded. Without a chuckle. I knew, now the game had finally moved on to another phase. By lunchtime, the office was buzzing. Everyone suddenly remembered how I'd helped them with their reports. How I'd gotten them out of deadlines. One by one, They started casually stopping by my office to ask me how I was doing. Even Susan from accounting, who had yelled at me a year ago about forgotten invoices, brought coffee. Not from a machine. Real coffee from a coffee shop. I didn't relax. That's when the weeks start to float. I'm the opposite. I was going to end this story on my terms. With my own hands. And for everyone who witnessed the spectacle to understand, I didn't walk away. I closed the door. By the end of the week, the tension in the office could have been cut with a knife. Jason hardly ever showed up, and when he did, his smile wasn't the smug grimace everyone had grown accustomed to. It shook like a cardboard facade behind which everything was beginning to fail. And I knew the system had cracked. Monday morning, Richard called me in. Yes, the same principal who once wouldn't get up from his chair to tell me, "You're stable." This time he did. In person. "Anthony, sit down," he began with an unaccustomed gentleness. "I wanted to thank you for being correct about the contract issue. You saved our reputation." I nodded. I didn't thank him. It was enough for me that he'd said it out loud. "For the first time in 6 years. We'll be reassessing our roles," he added. "I think you know what I mean." "I do. But I've already decided." "Thank you, Richard. But I'm reconsidering something too. My career and your leadership. My application is in the mail." "It's dated." "Correct." He froze. He didn't expect it. I got up. I walked towards the exit. Quietly. Without a scene. My footsteps sounded louder than any words. 2 employees approached me in the hallway. One of them used to copy my budget matrices. The other was forgetting the name of a client I'd set him up with personally. "Anthony," one began, "I'm sorry to hear about this." "No," I replied. "I'm not sorry. I didn't leave. I let myself go. It's different." And in that moment, I knew I didn't just walk out of the office. I was out of their game. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Subscribe now to see the hero put everyone in their place. I didn't go nowhere. I went to a place where I no longer had to prove that you were worth anything more than a smiling report form and a signature at the bottom. First Monday out, silence on the phone, coffee not from the office, and no Jason behind me breaking down the logic of paperwork. But, as is usually the case, the system didn't let go so easily. On the second day, I got an email from Mark, a senior supply chain manager with whom we had once worked together to develop a supply routing system. The message was short. "Did you hear? Jason has been removed from his position. Last night." I didn't respond right away. I sat down. I put on some music. My first thought was, so what? And then the second thought came, too late. Because when the system breaks down, it first breaks down those who held it. And only then the ones who broke it. 3 days later, Richard called. Himself. In person. "Anthony, I understand you've resigned. But, we'd like you to come back. On different terms." I listened. He talked a lot. About how the company was going through an internal reassessment of processes. About how a new vector requires mature leaders. About a program to rebuild trust. I let him finish. Then I asked, "What didn't you want 6 years ago?" He stopped talking. Because I knew. Then they wanted someone convenient, predictable, loyal. Now they wanted me. But not on their terms. I didn't give an answer. I said, "I'll think about it." And I didn't. I started writing. No, not a statement. Not a memoir. But a structure. A new one. My own project, a logistics startup. No corporate lies. No uncle promoting his nephew. With a transparent system where potential is not a synonym for a last name, but the result. I started putting together a team. Not from acquaintances, not from former colleagues, but from those who, like me, had once been stable and then turned out to be inconvenient. People who weren't praised in reports, but who kept the processes moving while the rest of us took selfies with our bosses. One by one, we started developing a platform. Not another trendy idea for investors, but a concrete system where logistics is based on experience, not slogans. It's simple. You work, you get results. You screw up, you fix it, not blame it on the assistant. And the more I delved into it, the clearer I realized All that corporate crap I was living in wasn't an accident. It wasn't a glitch. It was a pattern. Intelligent, self-replicating, toxic. And until someone pulled the bolt out of it, it would crush people and pretend to evolve. A month later, I received an invitation to speak at a specialized conference. The platform hadn't been launched yet, but something leaked out and the market heard it. The name of the project was simple, Row and Flow. Because it wasn't just a system. It was my flow. The flow after the storm. I was the last person to speak at the conference. There were guys from corporations before me, spouting words like digital tween, integration on the stack, and vertical optimization. I came out, looked at the audience and said, I spent 6 years working at a company where potential was measured by last name and experience was measured by silence. I'm here today because I'm tired of normal professionals being turned into statists. My goal is to give jobs back to those who actually work. No coffee breaks with my uncle. The room froze. And then applauded. Not because I spoke beautifully. It was because everyone sitting in those chairs had been me at least once. But they didn't say anything. And it was at that moment that I realized what had happened was necessary. To destroy the naive belief inside me that if you put up with it long enough, you'll be appreciated. You're just being used longer. But not anymore. After the show, people started writing to me. People from other companies. People from the old company. Even people who had been silent for years. Some said thank you. Others asked if there was room for them. Some simply wrote, you said out loud what we didn't have the guts to do. It wasn't ego. It was recognition, not as a star, but as a man who once sent all that falsehood to all the devils and had no regrets. I didn't respond to everyone. I just kept building what I had envisioned. We started working with local vendors. With real problems that the big systems were ignoring. For example, with one customer having trucks parked for 2 hours at the entrance because of a crooked entry pattern. We solved it in 2 days. No presentations. No pathos. And then one day, a couple months later, I happened to meet one of my former coworkers. A warehouse specialist. He had once been on the team where Jason was trying to implement his innovation. I recognized him immediately. So did he. Anthony? You're doing your own business now, aren't you? Yes, I answered. What about you? He shrugged. I'm still there. But it's falling apart. After you, there was a turnover. Jason was gone, but it was enough damage. HR's got a new face every 2 weeks. Listen, if anyone needs a reliable warehouse guy, I'm in touch. I handed him a business card. With a logo. Simple. Black and white. You do, Ben. We all need someone who isn't afraid to admit that all this shit isn't new strategy, but old cowardice. He grinned. Sounds like a plan. And I kept walking. Because I knew now it was working. Now I'm managing the process instead of fighting for the right to be heard. And you know what that's called? Freedom. 6 months later, we officially registered the company. It wasn't easy. No one likes to see someone leave loudly and still do better. But we already had 3 clients, 1 winning tender submission, and most importantly, a team where no one was licking the boss's shoes. I remembered every face that looked away in the hallway when I was handed second place. I remembered HR sending out congratulations to Jason on the very day I was plowing for 2. But now it was all part of the old life, like a faded frame of mind that you don't want to revisit even mentally. And at some point on a warm spring day, I found myself back in front of that very building. I had been invited as an expert to a business session on logistics reforms. The very ones that the old system had suddenly decided to discuss. I went up to the 3rd floor. Same walls. Same hallways. Even the same coffee machine. And there in front of me was the hall. The panel. And across from me is Richard. He looks at me, recognizes me like he's seen a ghost. Anthony, he says. Don't be afraid, I say. I'm not taking revenge. I'm drawing conclusions. I was tough at the session. Not because I was angry, because I knew that the truth sounds better when spoken without emotion. A corporate culture where insiders get positions and professionals get instructions is dead. It can't be saved by rebranding. Only honesty can replace it. The system either listens or it falls. After the event, I was approached by several people at once. Young, mature, with different eyes. Someone handed me a business card. Some said, "Thank you." And one guy, clearly new to the industry, said, "I didn't know it was possible to be like that, not silent." I smiled. You always can. The key is to start. And it wasn't inspiration. It was instruction. Because now I wasn't afraid of becoming uncomfortable again. I knew that this was my strength. The night after the session, I couldn't sleep for a long time. Not from adrenaline, not from excitement, from the realization that I had finally completed the loop. Closed the loop. Came out a winner, not because I had taken someone else's chair, but because I had built my own. I look at my laptop screen. There's a tab with a new email on it. It was addressed to me. From Maria, the same one who used to handle the paperwork in the old office. There are 3 lines in the letter. "Anthony, thank you for your presentation. I quit my job yesterday. You are an inspiration. I hope you'll take me on board." I read it, closed the email, and I realized, I am no longer feared there, I am no longer ignored there. I'm being heard. This is not a story about revenge. It's a story about how silence can be replaced by voice. And patience with action. And when people ask me why I did it, my answer is simple. Because I was once bypassed for my nephew. And now I don't need a director to promote those who actually work. And if anyone wants to know how the story ended, it didn't end. It continues every day when someone decides they've had enough of being reliable. It's time to be free.